We've got a big show for you today. George Conway is my guest. Stay tuned. The breakdown starts now. Welcome to the breakdown. I'm Tara Setmayer. The Rick Wilson is off today on Lincoln Project business. However, I have a special guest for you guys today, and we are pre-taping the show in order to accommodate him because we feel that he has important things to say that you guys want to hear about. So we are pre-taped, not live tonight, but that's all right because joining me today to talk about a lot that's been going on, considering January 6th and the DOJ and Donald Trump and everything else that's going on, is the one and only George Conway, who really needs no introduction. George Conway, welcome to the breakdown. It's been a while since I've had a chance to chat with you. I know you were on the podcast a couple weeks ago, but you and me, we haven't had a chance to chat in a while.
Yeah, it's
welcome
been a
back.
while. Thanks for having me.
I know. I appreciate you being here. I was texting with you over the weekend because I was down the shore in Jersey. Yeah, and we go back and forth about this because
the proper pronunciation of down the shore.
It is not. So that is the South Philly, South Jersey pronunciation. The up north people like me, there's a the in there. It might be a duh, but it's a duh.
They won't understand you. They won't understand you at the Wawa if you talk like that.
Right, because we go to 7-Eleven. Yeah. So it's DTS, down the shore. Yeah. Anyway,
drink lots of water.
Right, water. That's right.
Water. For the Eagles.
Yes, and lots of pizza and sausage and peppers on the beach, and Coors ice cream, which is one of my favorite. Coors custard, actually, one of my favorite things in life.
Yes, custard. It's not. Yes.
Anyway, enough with the Jersey pleasantries. You know, it was National Jersey Day the other day. National Jersey Day, which I had no idea.
What did Meadows do?
Exactly. He might have been the architect of it.
No, he's been nominated for the Jersey Hall of Fame. Did you see that?
Yeah, by Pascal, Congressman Pascal, right? Really? Yeah, I think it's hilarious.
I think he deserves it.
I know. I mean, the trolling has been insane. Snooki first from Jersey Shore.
Yeah, that was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Did you see the most recent one?
Which one?
From the Sopranos.
No.
Yes, Steve Van Zandt.
Oh, Silvio.
Yes.
Yeah.
Silvio. No, he was. Silvio.
Sil.
Yeah.
And also guitarist.
But. Yes, that's right, for the East Street Band. Yeah. And he did another one where he was like, "Come on, what is this? You're going to Pennsylvania? What is that? Come back to Jersey."
Come back to Jersey. Yeah.
It's brilliant. The Fetterman campaign is actually brilliant with their trolling.
I think they need to do. I think they need to get Bruce. I suggested this to somebody the other day. I think they need to get Bruce to do some kind of a Jersey song tribute to Mehmet Oz. I mean, that would just blow the internet away.
Right, because down the shore, everything's all right when Dr. Oz is there treating you. Oh my God!
Well, highways with broken femurs. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Hey Bruce, if you hear us, the boss, maybe Chris Christie can tell him. That's his
I don't know. I mean, I think he'd do it. I think Bruce would do it.
Oh my goodness. Well, that actually leads me, before we get into the whole DOJ stuff, I know that you've seen what's going on with the Democrats and putting money behind some of these MAGA primary guys in order to boost them because they think that this is somehow going to help them in the general elections. I mean, I understand what they're thinking here, but Democrats have just never been good at this. And I talked about this earlier this week on Peacock. I just think this is a terrible idea because Republicans are just better at the dark arts stuff. They need to keep it simple and define these guys as the crazies and extremists that they are, because they did this with Mastriano in Pennsylvania, and look what's happening. He's only 4 points behind. Speaking of Pennsylvania, I just think they're playing with fire here.
They really are. I mean, it's not, and it's, it's morally questionable too. It's not the way to do things. If you want to make the argument that your opponent is an extremist, do it. When the extremist actually is your opponent. I don't think trying to game the system this way is either a good idea morally or practically. It's just asking for trouble.
And also, don't you think it's a little? I think it's also a little hypocritical because
Yeah, no,
you're
it's
saying,
hypocritical. I mean,
right?
it's like, yeah, you're saying the, this man is terrible, and then you're saying, but you boosted him. You boosted
Right.
it. He's a threat to democracy. But hey, we spent $300,000. Yeah,
$400,000, right?
exactly. I mean,
Right,
it's
like they did
crazy.
in Michigan with this guy against Peter
Yeah,
Meyer,
it's
who voted
crazy.
against Trump. Voted to impeach Trump, and Meyer's being primaried by this
No,
this
and
wacky little loser.
it's a winnable. It would be a winnable race for Meyer. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
I just think that it's hypocritical and it's confusing. So it's like, just keep it simple. There's enough fodder for them to go after. And like I
absolutely.
said, this is the kind of stuff that they're just not very good at anyway. Like the DCCC and the official Democratic Party apparatuses should not be going after,
Yeah,
shouldn't be doing this. That's what PACs are for. Super
yeah,
PACs are for. Like, let the dark money do that
yeah.
if you're going to do that, where they don't
I
know
agree
where
with
it's
that.
coming from. So I don't know. But anyway, that was I just taped a Left, Right, and Center for NPR. I appear regularly on that program, and they give you a minute to rant about anything you want in the news. And that was my rant.
Just
My
only a minute.
only a minute. You
Only a
gotta
minute.
sum it up in a minute. But that was my rant, because I'm like, guys, come on. There's other places that you should be putting your money, and there's also other messaging I think that's more effective coming from the DNC's apparati. About this, that they should be focusing on, like, some of the good things, and then define your enemy. But
Yeah.
anyway, speaking of, Donald Trump was in Washington this week,
Yes,
and
he was.
that was something.
Usually is.
Yeah, it was something else. And he gave this American Carnage speech on steroids at this
Yes.
fake America's first PAC priority institute,
Shindig.
whatever
Yes.
crap that I call it the depot for the Trump losers that couldn't get real jobs, so they pooled money together with donors to give them jobs in the meantime. But they have like $25 million and 150 people on staff, and they are heavily focused on taking down our democracy. God forbid if Trump ever got elected again. Kevin McCarthy was at this thing. So was Jim Jordan, all the typical sycophants.
Yeah, everybody who wants to play up to Trump, except, interestingly, which will lead to another subject.
Yeah.
One Mark Meadows.
Right. Where is Mark Meadows? Is there an APB out on him? Has anybody seen Mark Meadows?
I mean, I'm hoping he's in the witness protection program.
Right.
But he was not. A year ago there was some big shindig that a lot of these same people attended in Bedminster, New Jersey, and they paid homage to the Orange Man. And Meadows basically gave some kind of a comment to some, I don't know what TV show or fake TV show it was, but basically saying that this was the start of the 2024 campaign, in essence. But he's nowhere to be found now, which is very interesting. And he was seen on the street last Thursday, the day before the grand jury met here in D.C., and he was on the street, and people asked him, "Hey, what you doing?" He wouldn't talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he was before the grand jury, but I think there's something going on with him. He's either hunkered down as a potential target, ought to be hunkered down. If I were his lawyer advising him, I'd say, keep your mouth shut and don't say anything, and hide under the table. Or maybe, I don't know.
He cut a deal.
We'll ask Sylvia. Maybe Sylvia would have a theory about that.
Right. Well, there has been proof of life. So there has been a Mark Meadows sighting.
Yeah.
That you raise an interesting.
Does he have any new friends?
Right. Right. It does raise an interesting question about that, because we have seen now, ever since Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony a couple of weeks ago, a whole bunch of folks now have decided that, maybe I need to cooperate and talk to some folks, because I could be in some big shit trouble.
Right. And there was a news story that came out today that said that the January 6th committee is now pressing for former cabinet members to testify. And I think what's happening is, I just think that, everybody feels a bit exposed, and everybody realizes how serious this is becoming. And, that there's this, the same way there was a cowardly galloping toward Trump, there may be a galloping in the right direction. And I hope that people tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And if they don't, I hope the Justice Department has something to say about it.
Well, if anyone knows how to gallop, it would be Josh Hawley, even though that looked like more of a prance to me than a gallop as he was running away on January 6th. However, I think you're right. We're starting to actually see some of that, which we hadn't really seen this.
No.
At all the other opportunities that we thought they should have done
Right.
it, like after the election when he was claiming this nonsense fraud, January 6th, fomenting an insurrection where people died. No.
Yeah,
That wasn't
4
it.
years ago, I always thought there was going to be some moment where, the bridge, the famous video of that Washington or the Pacific Northwest bridge collapsing, and the fall of the Berlin Wall, something, a tipping point of some sort where people just think the bottom fell out, right? The way it did for Nixon. I mean, you can use physical analogies, you can use political analogies. But it never happened, and it always amazed me that it never happened. And so, I kind of have come to the point where I believed that it never really would happen. And then I came to the point where, well, after January 6th, maybe he'll just fade away. But no. But who knows? Maybe there will be this spectacular collapse. I don't know.
Well, it would, of course, it would be.
I think, though, he's going to run, and
yeah.
I think he's going to cause a lot of trouble. And I think the problem is that he can run. And he doesn't need to get 50% of the vote. He only needs to get a certain amount that he gives him a plurality in these various states. And at a certain point, you get all the delegates. So, he could be a disaster and take down the Republican Party at the same time. So the Republicans are very worried.
As they should be. And it's apropos that it would be when their asses are on the line that people would finally decide that this is a bridge too far. Not because the democracy was being taken down, not because there was an attempted coup, not because the peaceful transition of power tradition was thrown out the window, not because of the integrity of our elections is now being questioned.
No, it's because they're afraid of losing elections.
Right. It's because they're afraid of losing elections or going to jail.
Right.
And so that's what did it, which is just so incredibly.
I mean, did you see that the Republican Party has been paying Trump's legal expenses, and they're basically saying we won't do that if you declare yourself to be a candidate before November?
Yes.
Which speaks volumes.
Yes.
I mean, incredible.
Yes.
It's like they're just trying to make it through November. Just trying pay him to go away. Please go away, or please hide. Please go out and play golf.
Well, the golf thing has also blown up this week too. We're going to come back to January 6th in a second, but this whole, the Saudi live tour that's financing Trump.
Well, it's LIV for 54.
Yeah.
54 holes. But
yes.
I put a crack out on Twitter. It says, basically saying, does it really stand for let's ignore vivisection?
Oh my God, that's
asking
good.
for humanity.
Right. That's right. That's good. I mean, but Trump, I don't know. I'm sure you saw this. He so is, and the fact that he, Biden gets excoriated for the fist bump with bin Salman, which, I mean, he's a disgraceful guy, but there are geopolitical implications here for this.
I wouldn't have done that. He might as well have just shaken his hand or just walked past him or something like that. And I understand,
it's problematic.
We need to have some relations, some degree of positive relations with this Saudi government generally, because there are a lot of strategic interests involved, but they overthought the fist bump thing, I think, and it just, you don't have to. I don't know.
But meanwhile, my point.
But meanwhile, Jared
Trump,
is getting $2 billion from MBS. I mean, come on.
And used his entire time in the White House to cultivate that relationship.
Oh, worse than that.
God knows
where was security. He on January 5th?
Right. He was coming back.
In Saudi.
Right.
He came back, and that's why he came back overnight and landed in Washington on January 6th, and that's why he was in the shower when they called him to tell him, hey, there's some stuff going on up at the Capitol. You might want to help us with.
Yeah, and the stories aren't about that, though. You know what I mean? It's not about that or about his using his security clearance that he never should have had in the first place to feed the Saudis information about his political enemies, bin Salman's, and we saw what happened over there, the Khashoggi Jamal Khashoggi killing. Like, there's so many things, and yet they're getting on Biden's ass about a stupid fist bump. I mean, it's so infuriating. What feels like a double standard here on this, and this the fact that the Saudis are holding these events on Trump properties, how much money they're paying, they're propping him up too because he's broke. So, I mean, it's just so disgusting.
Well, Trump always gets graded on a curve because he's so bad.
I guess. I
mean, that's you can't keep track of all the bad things. So
right.
when he does another one, it's like, oh, no biggie.
Right. And it's like, what? This would be like career ending for anyone else. But it's anyway.
That's how he ended up with a coup.
No kidding. Back to January 6th and what's going on here. We already, everyone pretty much believes that Trump is running again because of a couple of reasons. But one of the big ones is that he thinks this is going to inoculate him from the DOJ.
Correct.
But we did hear finally this week some life out of the DOJ about that there is a criminal investigation. It's seemingly moving forward, and they are looking at people, including Donald Trump, the whole fake electors thing and all of that. What are your thoughts on this? Because I've been frustrated with January 6th and the DOJ's what seems like the glacial pace that they're moving at this here. But do you feel? Let's break it down though for folks who don't understand what's going on here with DOJ.
There have been two schools of thought on this. And one school of thought is they'll get there. They have to build a case methodically. There's a lot of work to do. There are hundreds of people involved. It's the largest criminal investigation in American history. And then the other was, why haven't they hauled, all these White House officials before the grand jury?
Right.
And what's taking so long? And I've always been sort of in the middle. I think they were going to get there. I truly believe that they're going to have no choice in the end. And I believed Merrick Garland when he gave his speech on January 6, 2022, saying that no one is above the law, and we will hold people accountable regardless of their position. And the way you build a case is from the bottom up. And then some prosecutors disagree with that. They say you can build a case from the bottom up, but you can also go a little bit higher and start asking questions. But I think what this shows is that they have been moving, maybe not as quickly as some would like, but this was not the news this week was not something that just came out of the blue or was prompted by the powerful television impact, the public impact of the January 6th hearings. If they put these two guys, Mark Short and Jacob, the attorney, the vice president's government attorney, into the grand jury last week, that means they were talking to them for a while, because they wouldn't put them before the grand jury if they hadn't been interviewed to a fairly well by FBI agents and prosecutors. And, there was some indication in the reporting that they were called back to talk to the prosecutors, be interviewed by the prosecutors after receipt of phone records of Mark Meadows and others. I mean, what this indicates is, I think, is that this has been going on for a while, and it's just been under the radar. And now, it finally the dam burst, because they're actually hauling people into the grand jury, and people are walking out the courthouse door and being seen. Mm-hmm. So that's that. There has to have been a lot of work that has already been done, and the fact that they are getting to the point of asking witnesses before the grand jury about the conduct of people, including Donald John Trump, shows that they've done a lot of work and shows that we're getting somewhere. That doesn't mean there's going to be an indictment this week, next month, or even this year of anybody, but it means that this is a very, very serious investigation, and a lot of people have potential exposure, particularly Mark Meadows, who we talked about, who I think this is a guy who ought to flip. Some people say, "Oh no, he's too much of a Trumper to flip," but he's a wishy-washy guy, and I think he's the type of guy that they could flip. And then you've got Eastman and Giuliani, and you've got Navarro and some of these other people who also have exposure, particularly with the fake elector scheme. Mm-hmm. And they're clearly focused on the fake elector scheme because a fake elector scheme is just a straightforward case of documentary fraud. People were signing things that were just false statements and submitting to the government. If you or I did that with anything in our personal affairs, and it got into the hands of a assistant United States attorney to the FBI, we have a big problem.
We'd be in the clink.
Right. Exactly. And we would, and this was, these people weren't just trying to steal. They weren't trying to steal money from the government. Government's got lots of money. And they were trying to steal our democracy. They were trying to go for the whole thing. And that, I don't see how you can't charge that in some fashion.
I think a lot of people agree, and you have been a lawyer for many years and a very successful one. You understand these things, and I think people are starting. It's not even a matter of whether you could prove this case anymore, because people, many in the legal community have said, particularly since we've seen some of what's come out in the January 6th committee hearings, that a lot of these federal statutes, they've got a provable case here.
Right.
Some things more than other, but
yes.
particularly with this one. And it's a matter of political will, it almost feels like, at this point now.
The two statutes that really come to mind, I mean, there are others, people have listed a whole bunch, are 18 U.S.C. 371, which is called basically conspiracy to defraud the United States. And that doesn't mean just money. It means engaging in fraud that impairs the functioning of a legitimate aspect of government. And I think that the peaceful transfer of power between administrations ought to be high among the things that we would want to protect by that statute. And the other one is 18 U.S.C. 1512C and K, which are more specific to proceedings. Official proceedings is the word in the statute, but that includes congressional proceedings. And about a dozen district judges, almost in this, I'm in Washington D.C. here in the District of Columbia, have held that the January 6th counting of electoral votes, the proceeding before Congress, is an official proceeding under 1512C and K, and that some of these people who rabble rousers can be charged under that statute.
Yeah.
So that's, and all that requires just corrupt means or corrupt intent. And I can't see how it's not corrupt to create fake electoral certificates or to try to persuade and almost threaten, if you will, the vice president, to intimidate the vice president of the United States into violating his oath of office. That sounds pretty corrupt to me.
Yeah.
These cases are they would be pretty good cases to bring, I think. I mean, they've got a lot of work to do to put it all together and to figure out how they present it to a jury. But I mean, the harder cases would be, but not impossible. But the hard, it would be charges involving seditious conspiracy and incitement of insurrection. That's a little bit harder because you have to, you'll have to show some kind of specific intent to cause the violence. But hey, there's plenty of evidence of that. He knew that these people were armed, and we now know that they were told that he was armed. He didn't think they would harm him. He saw what went on up on the hill, and he didn't care.
Right. Get rid of the mags. They're not here to hurt me.
Get rid of the
mags. Let them go up to
there's
the hill.
A lot of evidence here.
It seems that way. But let me just stop you there for a second.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the fake electors thing. I mean, the emails that have been made public now. The New York Times broke the story. Maggie Haberman and Luke Broadwater. We're not the ones just calling it fake electors. It's not just us. These idiots involved in it were calling it fake electors.
Idiots. They were idiot lawyers. These people were lawyers. I can't, I mean, I've been joking that JD can stand for, juris dummies. And I mean, these guys, I mean, it's like that in the Watergate movie, All the President's Men, where the Woodward character meets with Deep Throat in the garage in Arlington and says, these guys aren't very bright and things got out of hand. And that's, I mean, they just aren't very bright. They putting these things in you. I mean, if you had asked me a week ago, hey, George, make up some fake emails just to as an example of the kind of thing that could get people in trouble on this fake elector scheme, I would not have come up with anything remotely as incriminating as what actually these people sent to each other and was reported in the New York Times. So it's really,
It's
it's really
remarkable.
something.
Yes.
How, I mean, these, I mean, but well, two things can be true at once. You can be dumb and a criminal at the same time. In fact, it
Right.
often happens.
Yes. I mean, they literally, a quote from the story in one of these emails says, quote, "We would just be sending in fake electoral votes to Penn so that someone in Congress can make an objection when they start counting votes and start arguing that the fake votes should be counted." They used fake twice in the same sentence.
And then later he said, probably shouldn't call it fake. We should probably call it alternative with it, and then he puts a little smiley face emoji. I mean,
right. And
I mean, literally, if we were writing, if you and I, Tara, were writing a movie script and we put that in, the producers,
they take it out.
The studios would say, "Oh, this is just the stupidest thing ever."
It's insane.
Nobody would do that.
Insane. And
nobody could possibly be that
stupid.
Freaking stupid.
Right. Because it's supposed to be a political thriller, not a comedy show, right? Like it's not an episode of Veep. This was coming from Arizona lawyers. This guy Jack Wilnachek.
Well, no, not just Arizona lawyers. I mean, he was the one who wrote those.
He was the
emails,
one who wrote that to Boris. He's writing to
Boris Epstein, who I know.
Oh, I do too, unfortunately.
Yeah, and
he's a fucking jerk off. I can't stand him.
He's a lawyer. That's the thing that kills me. He has a JD from Georgetown,
which is hard to imagine. I can't believe it. But we also have Andy Biggs, who's a member of Congress, who's in the middle of all this. There's a bunch of members of Congress who are in the middle of all this, which is why they were asking for preemptive pardons, for God's sakes, which is something else that came out during the January 6th committee hearings.
And the Georgia prosecutors really focused on the Georgia aspect of the fake electors. So,
because it was in multiple states. It wasn't just Georgia and Arizona. It was the Green Bay sweep that Peter Navarro proudly bragged about on Ari Melber's show, for God's sakes, on MSNBC. And then promptly was brought in because he's indicted now. He's another one.
Oh, and Eastman got another subpoena. It was reported.
Right. And so, can you explain what that's about?
I can barely keep up with all this.
We need one of those flow charts that you see in the FBI movies.
Well, actually, Asha Rangappa.
I
know her.
Asha
on Twitter.
Yep.
I mean,
yes.
She created this amazing chart, and I've told her she needs to basically go to a print shop and make prints of that, get it copyrighted, and she, sell them for $10 a pop. I'll buy one. I'll buy a framed one for.
So would I.
Framed and personally autographed one. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant chart.
Well, she's brilliant anyway, and great on Twitter. People should follow her. I would put that framed right next to my Russian warship "Go fuck yourself" poster. That Lincoln Project that LP printed and had a fundraiser for the Ukrainian forces over there. So I'd put them right next to each other. But can you explain what happened with Eastman this week? Because we know that his phone got confiscated when he walked out of a restaurant in New Mexico a couple weeks ago. But then there's been another subpoena. What is that?
I'm going to fess up and say I haven't followed it as closely as I should. But my understanding is that the first subpoena was issued at the behest of the inspector general at, I guess, Justice, and because there is some kind of an internal investigation, it must be of Jeffrey Clark, I'm guessing.
That's right.
But
who was interrupted
Clark,
in his undies.
Right, Jeffrey Clark, who ultimately took the job that I turned down in the administration, thankfully, and he. So that there was that subpoena, but this one was issued by an assistant United States attorney in the District of Columbia, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's you could infer that the Justice Department is clearly looking into what Eastman did, but now it's like the U.S. Attorney's Office, who's conducting criminal grand jury investigations, is looking at it too. He's got exposure. He's got big time exposure.
Yeah,
and we now know that there's evidence from the January 6th committee hearings that he basically conceded that his crazy theories of how to get around the Electoral Count Act were he knew they were doomed to fail because they were bogus.
And possibly illegal, considering Eric
Yeah,
Hirschman,
totally.
right? Eric Hirschman in the White House counsel's
Eric
office
Hirschman, right.
told him,
Get a lawyer.
get a lawyer, okay?
I don't want to hear anything out of your mouth other than
Right.
peaceful transition.
Right. And
here's the best piece of free legal advice I'm ever going to give.
Right.
Get yourself a good effing criminal defense
attorney. I mean, and I guess his prognostication on that was
right
spot
on. Right on the effing money.
Yes. I want to, speaking of people who prognosticated what a disaster things would be, LP put out a little rapid response with one of our favorite villains here, Lady Lindsey Graham, predicting what a disaster Trump would be, and yet how he's gone back and forth about this. And I mean, the hypocrisy and the just the sheer utter craven political self-interest that Lindsey Graham represents is just So of course LP had to do something with that. I want to show it for our audience because I know you'll enjoy it and so will the rest of them.
Okay.
Run it.
If you think Trump is bad for the party, I disagree with you. I think President Trump is good for the party.
What is your reaction to hearing what Donald Trump says?
Disgusted. And he doesn't have the temperament or judgment to control himself when he gets mad. He's a jackass. Donald Trump is the most unelectable Republican I've seen in my lifetime. And I'm a Republican and he's not. He's a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot. I think he's a kook. I think he's crazy. I think he's unfit for office. He doesn't represent my party, and he shouldn't be commander-in-chief. We found something in common. I've come to like him, and he likes him.
I tell you, that never grows old. It never really does.
It's evergreen. It is evergreen.
And yet, there's so many others you can do that with.
Yes, we could. And it's, Kevin McCarthy is another one, and Mitch McConnell even. But McCarthy, who was at that event on Tuesday speaking and trying to kiss Trump's ass as well, because he's still deluded into thinking he'll be Speaker of the House one day.
Yeah.
It's never happening. I've been saying that for months.
Yeah.
I used to think it would be Jim Jordan, but I think he's been compromised by January 6th. I think Elise Stefanik is angling for that job, so then she can position herself to be vice president with Trump when he runs again, which is just all despicable. They're all despicable. They all deserve each other. But it just is fascinating to me. I mean, George, you and I were part of the Republican Party for a very long time. And it's just, are you ever surprised at how low the party continues to go? Because I'm not.
Not anymore. I mean, when I registered as a unaffiliated voter, which is what we call it in New Jersey, in March of 2018, I did it because expressly I said to people at the time I was doing it because I felt the party was becoming a cult. A personality cult. And looking back, it wasn't so bad then. Right. It wasn't even. It was like it wasn't really
even that
nothing compared to what it is 4 years later.
Yeah,
nothing.
Yeah.
But it was already apparent then. I just remember thinking, this is a personality cult. This is not a political party. And here we are.
And here we are. So I have with a couple minutes left with you.
Yeah.
So the first round of the January 6th committee hearings are over with now. I still think that we are going to get a shit ton more of spectacular information.
That's a great legal term.
Yes, it is. Unlike you, I'm actually.
I mean,
I just play one on TV. You're a real.
No. I mean, if Rick were here, he would have used F-ton. That's not. I mean, I use plenty of F-bombs because I'm from Jersey and it's just in my DNA. But it just fuck ton isn't really a Jersey term. No, that's a Rick Wilson thing.
That definitely is a Rick Wilsonism. Yeah. But there's going to be a shit ton more of evidence that's coming out, and I think it's along the lines of who financed this thing, how far that goes into the Trump inner circle. Yep. What are your thoughts on the Ginni Thomas stuff? I think that this is not insignificant.
I honestly don't know what to make of it. Because, I mean, first of all, it's bad because it's just, I mean, to have the spouse of a Supreme Court justice engaging in this kind of activity is disturbing. It creates problems for the court. It creates problems for her husband. But on the other hand, and this is not meant in any way to be dismissive of it. It's like she's always been a bit of a gadfly. Mm-hmm. And you know this being
right.
From the like she's sticking her nose into things, and people are nice to her because she's
that's just Ginni.
Ginni Thomas, and Ginni's just Ginni being Ginni.
Yeah.
And the fact that she was lobbing this stuff in doesn't mean that she was really doing anything or being taken seriously, but being humored. But that said, it still looks horrible. It just looks horrible. And so I think it's fair, given her situation, that the inquiry be made as to what exactly did she do or not do. I mean, was she just sending emails rooting people on, or did she actually do something substantive? And then if there's any connection between any litigation before the court, I don't know that there is. I don't really know. I don't.
You think Clarence Thomas should recuse himself?
Well, I think now he probably should recuse himself from any case relating to January 6th. It certainly doesn't look good, even if there's not a particular concrete conflict of if his wife being involved in litigation. I think it would look better if he doesn't.
Did the right thing here. Right. That's right.
So, but again, I don't, it's hard to know exactly what she did without somebody asking her, and I think it's perfectly appropriate, as Liz Cheney and Kinzinger were said on television that they were going to do, that the committee ask her, okay, what'd you do? What was all this about?
Mm-hmm. Well, they seem to be working on that. We'll see. And as is the DOJ now expanding into Trump's cabinet, right? You had Mick Mulvaney being asked to testify, and Pompeo. I mean, Mnuchin also, I believe, is cooperating with the January 6th committee.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to hear a lot more about the 25th Amendment, what people were thinking about.
Yes.
In terms of the 25th Amendment, and I think that's an issue.
Something you called.
I've been saying that because I think, and I've written it more recently. I wrote a piece in the Washington Post a month or two ago about how the January 6th committee is going to bring up the 25th Amendment. I think it's important because there is some legislation that could change the way the 25th Amendment operates, because the 25th Amendment basically creates an option for Congress to take away the power to basically pull the president's license, from the cabinet and give it to some other body, maybe a team of psychologists and physicians or something, or somebody neutral. I don't know what the body should be, but it's something that was worth thinking about, because, putting it in the hands of a cabinet where the cabinet used to always meet only to tell Trump how wonderful he was.
Right. We saw
is not really the way I think the 25th Amendment should function. And, it requires the approval of the vice president to do it. And that's always going to be a problem, because Pence here could have stopped it even if the entire cabinet were on board. Yeah. But if a independent board of experts says this guy's off his rocker or comatose or whatever it is, it puts pressure. It gives cover to the vice president and puts pressure on him to do what he needs to do for the country. And here, I think it's important to remember that in the case of Donald Trump on January 7th, 2021, if the vice president and the cabinet had done what they're entitled to do and should have done under Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, that would have ended Trump's term, because Congress would have 3 weeks to decide whether or not to give the president his power back. And he had only 2 weeks.
Clock would have run. That's right. Clock would have run out. And also, I think that the idea of, Congress also has the opportunity under the 14th Amendment that if you're involved in kind of insurrection, rebellion against the government, you're disqualified from running for office, which I don't see how this isn't a textbook example of that. And it goes back to
the question is how that operates.
Right. That's right.
Unclear.
Well, but having an independent body of experts, determine whether he's mentally competent or not. George, don't you know that Trump has taken a cognitive test many times? Man, woman, TV, elephant, whatever it was.
And,
I mean,
I never got my T-shirt from the Lincoln Project, the one that man, man, woman, camera, TV T-shirt or whatever.
We will take care of that.
Please,
yes. We'll make sure. Since we did
Isn't
have
there a mug too? I should get a mug.
There might be. It's on the. It's at the store.
I want my swag. I want my swag.
We will make sure you get it.
All right.
Lastly, because of all of this crazy in January 6th, we touched on this a little bit when we said that it looks like some Republicans are starting to off-ramp. It looks like Fox News is also starting to pick their new favorite son, and it looks to be Ron DeSantis, which we are prepared to destroy as well when the time is appropriate. We've been laying the foundation for why he's problematic. He's not the answer. But it's interesting to watch the coverage now on Fox News concerning Donald Trump. I mean, do you think that that's it? They've fallen out of love with him or what?
I think Rupert has opinions, and I think Rupert's opinion matters in Foxland, and I think we're starting to see it. And if they turned around tomorrow on Trump, I mean, they'd run the risk of alienating some of their audience. But on the other hand, some of these disclosures are just too powerful to ignore, and there has to be, even among people who still believe the big lie or who support Donald Trump and watch nothing but even Newsmax or something. I think there's an exhaustion factor that's in, and fresh faces. Fresh faces are always important in politics, and Donald Trump is not a fresh face. He's saying he has nothing new to say. It's always it's the same riff over and over again. Windmills, the election, Russia hoax. I mean, Hillary. I mean, he's still talking about Hillary. I mean, it's just, the show has run its course. It's jumped the shark. It's time to cancel it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of canceling, and we're gonna leave our audience with a wonderful reminder of some of the work that LP has done with going after some of the corporate irresponsibility of some of these corporations. OANN looks like it is meeting its demise.
Oh, wow. Yes, that's true.
And, we're here for it. So as I
know
thank you.
Sad.
I'm so sad about this.
Let's see your sad face, Tara.
That's my sad face.
Okay.
But as we are ending our show today, and I want to thank you, George Conway, for spending some time with us.
It was fun as always, and thank you for having me.
We appreciate your legal brilliance and your wit on these things, and you're welcome back anytime. We'll make sure you get that swag. But I'm going to leave the audience with a reminder of how we feel about OAN and AT&T and the people who were funding it now that OAN is potentially meeting its demise. Thank you, guys. We'll be back on Tuesday. Rick will be back. And thank you for supporting us at the Lincoln Project. Thanks, George.
Friends, family, the people who make our lives complete. With AT&T, you can reach out to those people to feel the connection too many Americans are missing today. In addition to reliable connections and crystal clear sound quality, your AT&T plan helps fund One America News Network. OANN is a streaming channel that hires radical, alt-right, white nationalists as hosts, cheers the Capitol attacks, and promotes COVID-19 conspiracy theories. Want more? By keeping your cell service with AT&T, you can help pay OANN host Pearson Sharp to call for mass executions. And with AT&T, you'll be able to keep funding politicians like Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who pushes radical new laws against voting rights and women's rights. AT&T, funding sedition, oppression, and of course, One America News Network.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.